Travis Wayne Goodsell. I'm a Mormon born and raised, and so I've heard criticisms of the church as I grew up. And so I understand where Mormons are coming from. Mormons who come to my channel, they see the one video and they think that I'm anti-Mormon. I get that. You have no intelligence to think, wait a minute, does he have other videos? Who is this guy? Where is he speaking from? But I still recall that when somebody would tell me something bad about the church, I didn't seek to murder them, destroy their lives, and leave them in ruins to prove the church was true. And unfortunately, too many ex-Mormons have had this experience with Mormons, their friends, their family, their ward, and those who they don't even know when they do YouTube videos talking about how they left the church. People attack those who leave the church. And Mormons know that's the wrong thing to do. Mormons know that if you're going to want religious freedom, that you have to give religious freedom. That the church's main doctrine is not forced compliance, or we have to destroy and murder you. We all know that's Lucifer's plan. If people don't want to be Mormon, the church needs to let us go. They can't ruin our lives. And yet, that's what's happening. It's an established fact. Yes, there's the few who are like, what? I've never seen that. Try leaving the church. Oh, no, the church is true. Yeah, well, you haven't studied the church. You haven't studied the scriptures. And that's part of the problem. Is anybody who gets up and says that the Book of Mormon is true, that Jesus is the Christ, automatically nullified your false testimony. The Book of Mormon is not true if you're claiming it's Jesus who's the Christ. I refer you to 1 Nephi chapter 1, verse 2. The Jewish Christ is not Jesus. The language of the Egyptians is not Jesus. It's Amen. All Mormons should know this. We have Adam, Ondai, Amen. We even have Son, Amen, in 2 locations in our scriptures. We have other scriptures that were not called scriptures because Brigham Young didn't want them in our scriptures. And despite Mormons knowing this, they perpetuate the big lie, turning Joseph Smith into a Christian who believed in Jesus. As we go around the world on mission, saying, hey, Joseph Smith saw Heavenly Father and Jesus. And Jesus told him that he's an abomination in his own sight. The first creed of Christianity. The creation of Jesus by Constantine. And we don't get taught that. And so we don't catch on. There are things that have spider senses tingling, that something's weird and wrong about what we're interpreting. But we can't quite figure it out yet. But now that we have Google search, our eyes are opened if we but search. See, as a kid, I didn't have Google search. I didn't know what a creed was. I would read creeds and I go, oh, okay, creeds are bad. not realizing our articles of faith are a creed. So creeds aren't bad, it's what you misrepresent and lie about in them that makes them an abomination. And Constantine outright lied to control and dominate Christianity because the Roman Empire couldn't do it. They couldn't exterminate Christianity. And so, ex-Mormons do not understand September 6th. September 6th were people who were doing history research, and there were BYU historians for the church. And in order to work for the church at BYU, you have to have an interview, not with the BYU president alone. It's pretty much calling, where you are interviewed and with an extortion threat by the leaders of the church. And so when they make these discoveries about facts and evidence from church history, they're still faithful Mormons. All but one, the lawyer, was shocked that the church would excommunicate them and discipline them and fire them. And it's because that they still believe the church is true. And you hear a lot of the popular Mormons who leave the church and do videos, and they get interviewed, and they say, "Oh, I still want to be Mormon. I doubt they'll let me back in. You know, there might be a few things that will need to change." They've missed the whole big picture. D. Michael Quinn, for example, Mormonism and the Magic Worldview. He's wrong. His conclusion is wrong. He did not do a thorough research like he did with his Mormon Hierarchy series. I don't understand why, other than he's a faithful, devout Mormon who wanted to continue to be Mormon and was trying to reconcile the evidence that he was finding with how to apologize for the church being true. And once you start down that path, you've already lost your argument. You're wrong. You have to trust where the evidence leads. But you have to follow the evidence trail. You know, like a money trail. You have to follow the money trail to find out who profited and who got paid and by who and all that stuff. You can't just say, "Oh, the bank got robbed, huh? Well, that sucks. Maybe I'll use my personal opinion to blame somebody." No, you have to actually use forensic investigation. You have to search for the money trail. You have to see who was doing what before, during, and after the event of the crime. We can't just use our opinions and emotional feelings to start accusing and blaming people. But that's exactly what has been done in this process of historians trying to reconcile the evidence and facts with their loyalty to the church. Because a whole bunch of Mormons in the multi-millions, the church is almost gutted, as I've done the research and have figured out. In 2012, the news came out with Marlon K. Jenkins saying that active membership is probably around 5 million. Well, yeah, if you understand that you can't just say that, "Oh, we have so many baptized members, we're so strong and mighty and powerful, therefore we're true." No, because retention. We all know about retention, and when we go on missions, Missionaries blame the wards for not retaining their converts, and the churches blame the missionaries for not properly educating the converts. Blame goes both ways, and the problem is nobody's even trying to get those converts back. They're just letting them go and blaming other people for why they are no longer coming to church. But you can't count people who want nothing to do with the church as members. But the church still does, because there's membership records still. So the church is gutted. It's done. It's over with. But as the whistleblower informed us, they don't need Mormons anymore. They make enough money just with tithing alone to rely on themselves. Self-reliance is what the principle is. We're supposed to rely on ourselves, and so the church has done it. They've set the example, and therefore we're all wicked because we're not self-reliant like they are because they, took our money. We don't have other people to take their money so that we can be self-reliant. And then condemn those who aren't self-reliant because they didn't take money from others to be self-reliant. People just don't think about these things. You get Bruce R. McConkie getting up and telling us that we have to slave and sweat for our labor, while he's up there in a nice expensive suit speaking at the pulpit as he sits in an office all day and coming up with ways to condemn Mormons for what he himself is unwilling to do and hasn't done his whole life. And so I get many ex-Mormons and even people who aren't even Mormon at all coming onto my channel and accusing Joseph Smith. I don't go on a tear and seek them out to destroy their lives, to murder them. I know where they're coming from. I know that they've been fooled into believing the misinformation from the historians. That people are not taught how to do research properly. You don't conclude with one piece of evidence. You've got to gather everything together. And dealing with church history, you've got a whole ton of research ahead of you. You can't just do a surface publication of the saints and claim you're the expert on the subject. You can't publish one book and claim you're the expert. But hey, if it's faith promoting, you can have Wikipedia changed to reference your one book on Brigham Young. It's just, and authors are not references. The evidence are references. That's what I was taught. Don't you guys get taught this? You always go to the primary source document as best you can. And if you can't find the primary source document, you then go to the secondary source document. But you have to acknowledge it's a secondary source document or a third source document and be able to tie in other things to support the theory that you're developing, and then be able to test the theory in order to confirm or deny your results. And you have to be willing to say, hey, I got a denial. I have to dismiss this theory and move on to find some other explanation. And having been in the fields of science for decades, I'm well aware that much of what our popular culture thinks is true is all a big lie, because they don't follow the scientific processes. And when they get caught lying to us, nobody trusts them anymore. And so then people make up their own opinions as to what's true and call it my truth. And then you get into a worse situation, especially when you're dealing with church history and about the rise of the church and the current church as well. And it is just so frustrating trying to get through not just to Mormons, but to ex-Mormons. With Mormons, they immediately put up walls and barriers because they're afraid you're going to lie and deceive them. And so you're automatically the enemy. And so I'll already have gotten multiple thumbs down on this video, because Mormons automatically are scared that I'm going to deceive them and try to destroy the church. The church destroys the church by lying. I don't have to do anything. All I have to do is do a video that exposes it. And yet you have Mormon working for YouTube who's there to defend the church because the church is helpless and weak and can't defend themselves because they're not honest. You don't think about these things. If the church is true, they don't need you. They don't need a defense because they're in the right. And yet, time and time again, science has run the test and came up with a negative conclusion. Not confirmed. Church is not true. And Mormons want to now deny science and the scientific process of theory development and testing for confirmation or denial, and deny the logical argument structure for conversation and debate. They have to use fallacy to distract and deter people away from the big issue that the church is not true. Ex-Mormons. Yes, Joseph Smith was arrested on the 20th of March, 1826 for glass looking, was charged the misdemeanor offense of $2.68 or 86 cents. So you're now going to conclude that the Book of Mormon was written by Joseph Smith? Do you not know that, do you not hear that linguistic science has already established Sidney Rigdon as the major author of the Book of Mormon? Yes, I know, Mormon apologists used fallacy argument to try to distance us away from the truth, the fact that linguistic science has confirmed Sidney Rigdon is the major author of the Book of Mormon. Not the 116 pages. I'm the one who established through linguistic science and research into church history with theory development, testing for confirmation, that I can only do videos telling you about what I found, rather than going through the long, boring process. Though sometimes we'll go over that in my 3-hour videos for one thing. That's how intensive research is in the church. Joseph Smith Sr., by the way, had to rewrite the 116 pages because Junior gave it up to Martin Harris. But again, if you don't know why Martin Harris took it, because we're told one thing in the church, but something else happened that we're not being told about. And it has to do with the church wanting to hide the fact that Martin Harris was on the committee in Palmyra for an anti-Mason movement. Then you got to figure out, okay, well, what's the anti-Masons all about? Well, then you find out about William Morgan in Canandaigua, New York on 9/11, 1826. And then you find out, hey, wait a minute, Joseph Smith Sr. was a master mason at the Lodge of Canandaigua, New York. How was he connected? See, Mormons, the church doesn't want the Mormons and nobody to find out about this connection, because William Morgan was working on a book. What happened to that book? Why was he in Canandaigua rather than his home in Batavia? If you're not going to do the research, you're not going to understand the big picture. You're not going to understand why there's Jewish mysticism in rewritten 116 pages. You're not going to understand why it's now 1st and 2nd Nephi to go with 3rd and 4th Nephi, the record of the kings. Oh, hey, we understand it as 1st and 2nd Samuel, but it's actually 1st and 2nd Kings to go along with 3rd and 4th Kings, which we know as 2nd and 3rd Kings, or 1st and 2nd Kings. But if you're not going to do your research, you're not going to pick up on these things. You're not going to catch the mystic tie at the conclusion of Jacob's record. You're not going to catch the Temple of Solomon. You're not going to catch why the late war is plagiarized in the Book of Mormon. Because as ex-Mormons, you go, oh, yeah, okay, plagiarized. I've made my conclusion now. I'm done. I'm not going to go any further to find out why the late war was included in the Book of Mormon. There were others. Like I said, Jewish mysticism is in there. Mystic tie is in there. There's others. Why did they use the 1769 King James Version of the Bible in there? Maybe it has something to do with Acts. Are you unfamiliar with that? Shall we go over the church history that Joseph Smith wrote in 1838? Because everybody was starting to think he was a Christian and that Jesus was his Christ, and so he needed to write a history to say, no guys, you're getting it all wrong. And if you didn't know, it was the Danites who were pushing in the underground movement to turn Mormonism into Christianity with Jesus. Acts. And you'll never understand why Egyptian gold plates if you don't know that Joseph Smith Sr. was a master mason of the York Rites. And you'll never understand that movies talking about the Holy Grail is talking about Joseph Smith Sr. He's the bloodline, guys. That's why section 103 verse 16 is a Mormon man like Moses. The bloodline. The Holy Grail. But if you aren't going to pay attention and do your research, you're going to miss all this stuff. And I keep telling you, there's nothing for anybody to fear. This is the greatest story ever told, and it's not the Bible, which is a lie. It's all apocalyptic literature. Constantine turned Jesus into a real boy whose nose grew. The 3rd chapter of Acts 22nd and 23rd verses. Why is that the only passage from the New Testament? All the others are from the Old Testament, wrongly called Old Testament. It's the Tanakh. Because you got Isaiah, you've got Joel, and what else we got? Malachi. And then he throws in Acts. Why not Matthew 24? Why not the book of Revelation? The Book of Mormon, the Book of Mormon says, referred to the book of Revelation. Late war, Revelation. If you do not do your research, you're going to miss it. And when you hear my videos, as you can clearly tell, I can't tell you everything in every video. And yet, nonetheless, people come out with comments that expose how stupid they are. That they don't think. And so, yes, I know where you're coming from. You're exposing your ignorance. You're not doing your research. You're demanding that I prove that the church isn't true. I don't have to prove it. They prove it. You know, Nelson comes out in April conference, this last April conference, with another mistranslation from the Bible. And I haven't been able to get to that yet. Turn the other cheek. You know, where he told me not to hurt him. Because you're missing the big picture. He's trying to destroy me. I've been telling you this the whole time. He wants me dead. And so he came out and said, oh, you've got to turn the other cheek, Travis. Don't hurt me. He purposely screwed up that translation. Take your right fist and smite someone on their right cheek. You can't do it. Because you have to do this. It's a slap. You're taunting the person to fight you. And so if you, being taunted, give in and draw first blood, you are guilty according to the law. But if you turn the other cheek and they hit you, they've now drawn first blood, they get in trouble with the law. And yet here Nelson is perpetuating the lie of Christianity. That we have to just be abused by our enemies and then pray for them. That they'll stop and figure out the truth as they destroy our lives and murder us. Do you understand how important it is to get scriptures understood correctly? Because holy wars even get started with misinterpretations of scriptures. And people throwing in stuff. Like redactors. That's what redactors do. They throw in stuff to fix the record. And so yes, Paul, even though in Romans 16 he says that women had a voice in church and had priesthood office, nonetheless comes out in another book and says women are to keep silent in church. Okay. When you do linguistic research, you realize that that passage where women are to keep silent was from a redactor who wanted to change and blame Paul for his own personal beliefs that women should be subjected to men. But instead, people go around blaming Paul, just like ex-Mormons go around blaming Joseph Smith for polygamy, for his inability to translate, for witchcraft, for being a criminal, for trying to overthrow the government. You name it, Joseph Smith's been accused of it. And he's been accused falsely. Because you don't do your research. You don't learn the truth. You don't understand why 2 Nephi chapter 3 says Joseph Smith is the founding Christ of Mormonism. And instead turn Joseph Smith into a Christian who believes in Jesus as the Christ. And if you're a Christian believer, you're deeply offended that Joseph Smith would be a Christ. Because you don't understand about Constantine. And so I've done many thousands of videos. You know, while Travis Wayne Goodsell was shut down, I was still doing videos on TWG. And over the time, when they shut TWG down, I was doing videos back on Travis Wayne Goodsell again. And then was doing them on both. And it's frustrating that I can't get through to the majority of people. Because YouTube purposely won't allow it. I have to rebuild Travis Wayne Goodsell because of the damage they caused from the one video that the church did not want you to know about, the false Christ of the Great and Abominable Church. And there's nothing I can do about it. I can't conquer YouTube. If YouTube doesn't want to be nice to me, they want to destroy me, there's nothing I can do. They don't allow people justice on YouTube. And so if they shut me down, I can't stop them. Their hate dictates. If they won't give me religious freedom, if they won't allow true science and logical argument, there's nothing I can do. So just like with Utah, if Mormons are so ingrained on defending the church because they think that the church can't defend itself, that's all you need to know. And yet you get caught up thinking Brigham Young's a true successor because you don't do your research. Because if Brigham Young's the true successor, then Joseph Smith somewhere has said that the president of the Quorum of the 12 is to succeed as the successor for the presidency. That somewhere the keys of Peter, James, and John are the keys of the president of the church. Where are they, Mormons? Did you do your research? I'll tell you, you won't find them, but you will find section 107, verse 91, that the keys of the president of the church are the keys of Moses, not Peter. That succession is by a Melchizedek priesthood vote. Actual vote. Section 107, verse 22. But if you're not going to do your research, you will never know. You will be blinded to the truth. The church becomes a stumbling block for you as you are being used by the church to go around and continuing to spread the misinformation and disinformation of the church. And then you get mad at people and want to destroy their lives if they don't accept your lie that you're lying for the church for. I've been telling you. Read 19 July 1840 B. There's an A and there's a B. I prefer B. There's more information that destroys the church. The church should cease to exist if all Mormons knew and understood 19 July 1840. Women, you who are satisfied not having the priesthood and priesthood office, do you not care to know the truth? 17 March 1842. Joseph Smith gave priesthood and priesthood office to women. He let them decide what they wanted. And they did. They had votes. They voted for the name. They voted for Emma to be the president. And there were women who went around giving blessings. But if you do not know that it comes from that document on that day, you end up creating myths. And you lead other people astray. And I've heard it from women who get up in a sacrament meeting talk and talk about how women used to give prayers. They weren't blessings. They were prayers for those oxen. And so she was elevated to Relief Society president, by the way. Thank you for spreading the lie. Now be rewarded with an elevation in office. I see that too often in this church. Those who perpetuate the lie get elevated. And it's not just about who's right and who's wrong. Because as I've told you, it's a life and death situation. Not an eternal life and death. An earthly, physical life and death. They're seeking to murder everyone, to purge this church. And Mormons are not going to be happy when they get purged. But the church is claiming, oh, it's not us, it's God. Are you really that much of a sucker and loser to believe that God is purging you? Do you not understand, those of you who are left, why the majority of the church is gone? You know, it's one thing to know that the church has lied and that you're out because of the lies. It's another thing to spread misinformation from the lies of the lies you were told, because you haven't done your research to confirm or deny. See, because those who do not understand Joseph Smith was not a polygamist, the theory test has been concluded. He's not polygamist. You have to dismiss that he's a polygamist. And then you go, but. No buts. I've already run the test. And I keep running the test when something else comes up. You know, oh, nope. There's the source for that claim. And there's the date for when that claim was made. Dismissed. See, Fawn Brody, 1950s author or something like that. And seriously? So she was around during Joseph Smith's time. She's that old. Yeah, I don't think so. All she was doing was taking the lies and compiling them into a book to make her conclusions, which is no different than Volume 3 of the Saints that the church just released.